The three I was just with are 8, and 2 of them are identical twins, 12. And the 8-year-old, 2 days ago, came in first place in gymnastics for the state of Virginia for his age group. That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool's an
I mean, he's so,
understatement.
he doesn't make a big deal.
He's humble.
Yeah, I mean, like, he even got a ring that looks like a Super Bowl ring. It'll fit on his big toe, that's it. But anyway. But he puts the work in 16 hours. He does all of them. He does 6 events. He came in first place in Florida. And he has, but they do 16 hours a week.
That's a commitment.
Yeah,
Quite a commitment.
I think that's with any of us, like you in church and your Bible study and your schools and it's hours. Don't make anything up.
Excuse me? Don't make anything up. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. For those of you who are not members of St. Paul's, welcome. We're glad to have you here. For those of you who might not know me, I'm Pastor Dan Bertel, and it's an incredible pleasure to introduce Dave Larwa to you. Dave and I have known each other, 40 years? Going back to when we were both in publishing with Silver Burdett Ginn. And back then, I knew Dave as our science consultant. And he would go out and do presentations for the National Science Teachers Association and have a captivated audience who was hanging on every word that he had to say. Dave is retired now, but now he walks everywhere. And he's going to tell you about some of those walks that he has taken. The Camino, he has walked across Spain. He has walked across the Alps down to Rome. I'm not going to steal his thunder.
There we go.
Dave Larwa.
Thank you. Woo-hoo. Well, my thrill is the fact that I've been doing Bible study with some of your colleagues here for the last 3 years or so. And so I often said, gee, I have to come and actually see them. So there's 3 of them here I see today. So that's a big thrill. Oh, 4, that's right. To see you all live and in person and not on the TV screen as we've done in the past. So as an opening, I will tell you that I'm left-handed, hyperactive, was taught by nuns and priests my whole life. And the reason I have to tell you that is that because of all the things that I've accomplished in life, it's basically based upon fear. And that's a true statement, and it's important when I talk about pilgrimages and where I am in my life at almost 76 now. And so the reason I mention fear is because all the things that I do today are based on the fact that I have to achieve, and I have to overachieve to prove that I have any worth. And so that fear-based issue does come into play in a lot of what I do and talk. I work with prisoners in jails and prisons and things like that. And again, when I look at my backpack, and when you realize that this backpack that I have here, and you get to try it on later on, it's exactly the weight as if I were walking tomorrow on the Camino or anywhere else, is that backpack represented, the first time I've done one, all my fears. And I work with people to help them to go and do a pilgrimage. And it's interesting because they want to pack every single thing. Well, what if it rains? What if I get a blister? What if I don't have this? What if I don't? And it's all they're doing is packing their fears. I've walked some 7,000 miles in the last 8 years on pilgrimages. And every time I go, that backpack gets a little bit lighter. But I still have some of those fears. And I suspect they'll just stay with me, and you learn to live with them. All of you in this room obviously are pilgrims, if we want to make a general statement. Because your ultimate aim as a pilgrim is actually not to get some place, it's to get to heaven. This piece in between is just stages that we go through. The ultimate aim is to get to heaven, period. So when I said that line of a book, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, you know, that has to be the eventual outcome of it all. The slide, can we shut these lights off here by any chance? A couple of these, so it'll be easier to see. I call this Camino 101. I even have a follow-up presentation to this in which I really get into everybody in St. James's family, all the aunts and uncles, and I do it all through art and literature. And today what I'm going to do is begin a little bit from the Bible side of it, and then I'll get into what it is actually to walk to the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. So I have to get a little bit of James in it. There is, in every state in the United States, there is a organization or a chapter of the American Pilgrim Association. And those associations are not religious-based, it's just the title. It's non-denominational, and we're strictly there to help and encourage people that have a need in their life to go and to walk a pilgrimage. They exist also in Canada, South America. I belong to the English Society, Ireland. They're all groups of people to assist others to go and try to do the walk. What do we have here? Somebody moved my message? Was that me? Oh, I get to tell jokes now? Oh, there we go. So the first one that you're probably wondering about, at least I would, is then what is a pilgrimage and why do people even go on it? Who goes and where do you go? And those questions are dependent upon your needs or where you are in your station in life. Obviously, all religious denominations have pilgrimage sites, whether it's Mecca or St. Anne de Beaupré or to go to Germany, to the home of Martin Luther, wherever. We have places that we go, and these places are special and they have this historical significance to them. So I'm going to address those questions. If you're wondering what the boot and the shell and the arrow is, it'll become apparent because that is so important when I'm walking the Camino. So pilgrimage. Anybody have a definition they want to use of a pilgrim, rather? Anybody that want a pilgrim? Pilgrim? What?
Someone that explores, takes a voyage.
Takes a voyage, yeah, does that. Anybody else? Well, if you got a voyage, you have to figure out where you're going. Would you all close your eyes for a minute? Close your eyes. At the count of 3, everybody point north. 1, 2, 3, point. Open your eyes and look at where everybody's pointing. All right. So, yeah, up. If you were a group of third graders, everybody's pointing up. A couple of you actually got it. I checked my phone and that's it, that direction. Well, so I'm trying to give you a little bit of a direction. So in the generic term of pilgrim, it just means one who travels through or through a field. And it goes back all the way back into ancient Greek and Roman times. And the word pilgrim changes from language to language. Pilgrimage is just then the act of going and doing and performing this walk. But there are stages in all pilgrimages, and it also represents what you're going through in your life. And you'll see that. Pilgrim, when I ask a lot of times people about what's a pilgrim, all they think about is the settlers. This is actually a coloring book page from the 1950s. I probably could have colored that, right? And it's kind of interesting to think when you look at that, they're sort of like clean, white, blonde-haired people that came to our country. But that's not the pilgrim I want to deal with right now. But that's a pretty common one. Then pilgrimage also can be changed depending on what your interest is in life. You could go to the World Trade Center area. You could go to here. What, anybody know what that is? Yeah, that's Graceland. I mean, there are thousands of people every year that's their pilgrimage as they go to Graceland. So when we think of pilgrimage and we think of sites, it can be geography, it can be place, it can be faith, it can be church. There's different ways of defining where the pilgrim eventually goes to and how they get there. So pilgrim and pilgrimage can vary. There we go. Here's an example of some pilgrims that I personally have met as I'm walking. The little girl on the far left, as I'm looking at it, her father had passed away. They were living in Sweden. They were working for IBM. The husband passed away from an illness, and mom took the daughter, and they said, we're going to go on a pilgrimage. And this young lady would draw pictures for me. I teach origami, so I would do origami for her. But she and her mother walked the 500 miles of this particular pilgrimage. It was cute because when the girl got tired, mom would give her more M&Ms and things like that to keep her going. But she was smart. She didn't want the young girl to be discouraged. So if they did tire out, they would take a bus or a cab to the next town. The idea that we're going for a reason. Dad has died. We have to have a moment of clarity and where we're going forward. The other fellow on the other side, in his hand, he's holding a passport. And I had two here I'll share with you. He's been walking for 5 years, so he's a little different on the pilgrimage side. And the piece he has in his hand is the same thing that I'm going to share with you a little bit later. Every town I go to, I get a stamp because I have to prove when I get to the end of my pilgrimage that I, in fact, did everything that I said I did. And the building he's in is a place that I was living and working and helping pilgrims. The one in the middle, that is the church in Santiago, Spain. And again, how things change and how people enter your lives. This is a gentleman that we both worked with. I didn't see him for 25, 30 years, except for Christmas cards. And very Catholic, and he always saw me going on these walks. And I said, Jeff, if you ever want to go, I'll take you. And at this point now, I've spent more time with that man walking than any other human being in my life. So it's interesting. Again, the little girl, a special place in my heart. The young man over there, different, but still, he's a pilgrim. And my friend in the middle, a deep-seated understanding that we'll all take to our graves. So pilgrims look different. That looks like me, and that's probably a true statement over there, right? Just got off the boat. Yeah, because it's kind of interesting because, again, when you think about my backpack here, literally at this point, I just got back from 2.5-month walk, and I wore my underwear once, and I have 2 pairs of shorts, 1 pair of pants, a down windbreaker type, a jacket windbreaker type, a hat, 2 pairs of socks, and 2 pairs of liner. That's all I take for 2.5 months. So you don't want to be next to me. That's right, you know. But anyway, but that's that fear factor. Well, what if when you go on a trip, how much stuff do you put in your suitcase and you come back and you didn't even use any of it, right? And so it is different. Peregrino, that's Spanish. It's obviously, if you know Spanish, that means male. Peregrina is the female. A full half of the people that walked last year on the Camino de Santiago were female. And it's amazing because I mentor people. They come to my house. How many single women who have gone through drama with husbands dying or other issues who all of a sudden at this stage in their life have a need to go? And they do. This is, I had to do a couple of James pictures here right now. And obviously we have couple of people we know there. One is Zebedee, and Zebedee's name means gift of God, or gift for God. And when you think he gave up his two sons instantly, I mean, Jesus says, you know, I want them, and the Father says, yes, you know, you must take them. And so Zebedee, and I also know the person that's standing up the highest, that's James, and the other one is John. I love trying to get artwork and trying to figure out who the apostles are. And I know generally with James, because he's 4 years older than John, John is always shown as a younger person in the paintings. But what an incredible story to all of a sudden just say, I want your sons. And he says, okay. And then you get Salome after that, right? Anybody know what happens here? What's happening from the Bible? What is it? We have a minister back here, two of them.
Is that the healing of the little girl?
Yes. Yeah, healing of the little girl. And she's 12 years old. Jesus has already, before he got there, healed another woman who was sick for 12 years. So 12 apostles. And then the rabbi, the head of the temple, spots Jesus walking after he cures this other woman. And he says, my child is dying. And Jesus goes there, right? And the child is dead. And he performs the miracle. The reason I have here is because James, John, and Peter are the only three there. And James, John, and Peter are going to be in two other ones that come up. And that's significant in the life of James. If you know the Bible, and I don't claim to be a Bible expert, but there's no Gospels according to St. James. Matter of fact, there's very little of anything about James in the Bible. Yeah, I probably in 2 pages can write it, and that's the end of it. And so that's important. What's this one? What's taking place? What's happening? Come on, somebody. Where are they? They're in the garden. All right. So, yeah, it's a great painting. And over on the far right-hand side, you see the soldiers. And who are they bringing up there? Yeah, who? Judas. Yeah, that's right. And they have to bring him because the guards don't know what Jesus looks like. In the meantime, who's in that little hovel there is James, John, and Peter. They're there and they're falling asleep, or they are asleep, and the angel's there. You know, so again, that's the second thing that makes James different in John and Peter. Third one. There we go. What's happening in this one? Yeah, he's going up. He's transfiguration. And for the 3 of us or 4 of us that did Bible study, every time I would like click, oh, I'm going to learn something, right? And so we have Moses on the left, we have Elijah on the right. Moses represents what? The law, right? And the other, and then Elijah is the theology. And look at who we got there. We know who Peter is because the keys are laying next to him. He's also the oldest one. And again, you can see that just above Peter and to the left, wearing the red, that's John. Again, I can tell because he looks younger than James does. So those 3 things are the most important things that we have about James and why he's special, among a couple of other things. But right now, that's the part I wanted to focus on, to give you a little background. So, what do they say about James? Well, what you may not know is that James goes by a lot of different names, and you have to come to my next presentation. He has, and you get mixed up when you read the Bible and what James you're talking about. But if I were going to Spain and I wanted to know a little bit more about that, then I do know he was an apostle. And those were the 3 things that we just saw that made him really special. And then he's also known as a pilgrim. And now you're going to come back to that and make that connection. Why is he a pilgrim? Look at that painting too, if you look at him. You know, in my other presentation, I actually have a picture of what he really looked like. You were supposed to laugh at that. But anyway, there you go. Well, you know, he dies when he's 40 years old. That doesn't look like a 40-year-old, anyway. But that's a good picture of him. He's a pilgrim. And the last one is pretty incredible. He's a knight. And this, in another presentation, I have probably 15 pictures of him as a knight all over the world. I go to Haiti, and there's a festival for St. James with voodoo and music and pictures of St. James all over the place. And so he is a knight. And he has a different name in each of those. So we have these items that happen. So where did James go? What else might he have done? So Jesus is dead. James is with the apostles. They're in the Jerusalem. The tongues come down. They all get sent off to different places. And that's where some of the mystery starts coming into play. Is where does James go? And the dilemma we have is somewhere in the Bible, Paul says, I'm going to go to Spain. And if Paul says he's going to Spain, then why? Generally, that means he's going to Spain because nobody went there. But in this case, now, he went there. So he goes all the way to Spain, and he comes all the way back to Jerusalem again, and he has a real problem because he has 9 disciples with him, and they make no converts. That's tough, when you're doing that for a living, and nothing happens. So he leaves 7 of them behind, takes 2 of them back to Jerusalem, and then there's these incredible stories, and I don't have 5 hours to deal with the stories, but eventually then what happens is he gets beheaded by Herod Agrippa, makes the order. And we can see on the far left the Jewish headdress that's on there from the temple. We can see above that there's a wreath that's going to come down, and which signifies he's a saint. So let's think about this now. So James is now deceased. He's been beheaded. How does James get to Spain? James is the patron saint of Spain. He went to Spain, we think, and he didn't have any converts. He goes back to Jerusalem. He's now beheaded, and he has to go back to Spain. There's a red line there, if you can see the red line. It begins in Jerusalem and ends where he's buried in Spain. I mean, if you have to find the farthest point in Spain, I've been there, and that's where they take him. The 2 apostles and a couple others. And there's these incredible stories about how he even gets there on a boat with shells. And he arrives, and what happens when he arrives. And Queen Lupa's there, and Queen says, there's no way you're going to put James on my land. And she, gets the bulls out, and then magic happens called miracles. I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast. But she puts these tasks in front of them. And if they complete these tasks, she would then allow James to be buried in Spain. And of course, it happens. They make it happen. She converts to Christianity, and they bury James. This is like year 45, right? Year 45. And they don't discover James's body until the 800s. So, what happens between 45 and 800? Yeah. And why would they all of a sudden in 800 find the body of James? So that becomes part of that. So we're still going to come back to that. I put this one up here because nobody was going on a pilgrimage. during the time of Jesus as he walked the earth, although we could say Jesus did pilgrimage to Jerusalem, right? But by and large, after Jesus died, all the people that were active in Christianity then were telling all of the people, stay home. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You know, why go traveling? Because there's no Christians over there. Leave the apostles and disciples to go off and do that. You need to stay home, take care of your family, raise kids, and make food and all of that. And so many of the leading preachers at the time, for the first 200 to 300 years of Christianity, were writing about the need to stay home. Develop what you have in your own community instead of going out around different communities. So that's the reason I put there. And so this was a line. And that's a great line. You know, you don't have to go to Jerusalem to have faith. I mean, how many people have not been to Jerusalem here? Yeah, but you still got faith. You know, so that's what they were telling them, even way back then. All right, come on. We'll get this to click. There we go. So let's see. Oh, so James is dead. He's buried. It's like the year 45. 800 years go by, and they discover his body. How do they discover it? Well, as luck would have it, it was a shepherd was out in his field, right? And he looks up above and sees these great stars. There's those stars again. And the stars are shining down. He says, wow, there must be, his name is Pelio. And he says, there must be something special there. So he goes, finds the bishop. The bishop comes out and they start digging. And lo and behold, they find the bones of James and the two disciples of James. This is like 860. And already now, the first woman, and she's a queen, her husband dies from Astoria, she walks and does the pilgrimage to Santiago, because that's where James eventually is buried, in Santiago, Spain. And multiple churches have been built or are being built and have. But so we have the first woman, she walks there. Then we have the first foreign woman that walks there, and she's from Germany. And she's a princess, her husband dies, she continues to walk. And you notice I have all women in this because I have all daughters. This is great. And this is the woman that I absolutely would want to have dinner with. The story is incredible, and the book is on the floor somewhere. Her name is Marjorie Kemp. I have to tell you a little bit of the story. Why don't we do it in time here? I got to tell you a little bit of the story about Marjorie. Marjorie is a mystic, and this is the 1500s, right? And she has 16 kids, so she's more than a mystic. I got 16 kids. Anyway, but she has all these kids. She marries well. She has these kids. She starts a brewery, a bar, does a bunch of things like that. All of a sudden, though, she gets struck by the light, by God, and she has to make amends and go on a pilgrimage. And she walks from England now. She walks to Rome. She walks to Jerusalem. She walks to Santiago. This is like 1417. That's the other thing you have to think about pilgrims. What is, the year is 1100, 1200, 1300. What's there for them to get food and protection and clothing? This is not an easy task. Most of these people will not come home again in the same way they left, because it's a long time to do all those. Anyway, Marjorie Kemp. The rest of the story is kind of cool. She wrote the first autobiography written in English is the one she wrote about her travels. And she was illiterate, but she told it to somebody and it was written down. The book then is lost for 500 years. How's that? But somewhere in England, and I've forgotten the town right now, in a mansion, some wealthy kids were playing ping pong, believe it or not, and he steps on the ball, so they go into this cupboard of this huge mansion, and they start rummaging around looking for ping pong balls. Guess what they find? Her book. Her book. And it's been transcribed. There's all kind of stuff on the websites and studies and classes you can take about Marjorie. But what an interesting story about a woman in that time going from this to writing the first autobiography ever written in English, all because of the pilgrimage and the need to change and bring something else happen in her life. Anyway, I love it. That's why I keep picking. Oh, and yes, I have to put this one on. In 1994, who's that? Shirley MacLaine walked the Camino. Does anybody, you all know who she is? All right, I'm just checking. I get a smile there. Yeah, wherever you go, I walk to Machu Picchu, and there's a sign and they all talk about Shirley MacLaine breaking something there. Anyway, my wife wanted me to remind you also that she's walked it 4 times too. Here's this map. Every line you see up there is a pilgrim route. And it's something like 23,000 miles of pilgrim routes from all over. And it's pretty amazing. All the different countries. A lot of them you can see are in France, because that was a big place to start pilgrimages originally. This is the cathedral in Santiago, Spain. And I wanted to put that there because we have Marjorie Kemp, and we have all these people beginning their walks. And slowly over time, the highest point in the Middle Ages to walk on pilgrimage to Santiago was in the 11, 12, and 1300s. And then something happened. It was called the Reformation. Anyway, that really did come into play. But now you have to remember that map where all these lines were coming. 250,000 people were walking to Santiago in the 1200s every year. 250,000. How did they get food? Where did they get to go to sleep? Who kept them away from the wolves and bears and highwaymen and everything else? And that comes into play. In last year, when I was there, I walked it last year. In 2023, 4,200 and get my yeah, thank you. Give my lips to work. You can read the numbers. That's how many people walked to Santiago. And what you see on the tables here later, you can look at. These are my compostelas from that I got. One of them, I have a lot of these now. But that's what I get when I finish the walk. This one I'll come back to. This is when I went to Rome this year and walked. So they figure on average about 600,000 people came. What are they going there for? And they are going. And I've walked with people in every religious denomination you can think of, in every form of size, shape, color, backgrounds that have walked it. When I'm done here today, if you really want to know and get a feeling of what it would be like, you have to watch this movie, The Way. Martin Sheen made the movie. His son, Emilio, directed it. And this movie contributes a lot to the increased use of walking the Camino de Santiago. And actually, another movie was made of this where Martin Sheen is interviewed, because this incredible thing happened in people's lives all over the world based upon what happens in this movie. It's pretty, and you can get it for $2 on Netflix. If you don't like that one, this one is pretty incredible. And it's just called Walking the Camino 6 Ways. And it follows 6 families or groups of people as they walk. And you hear them telling their story. And it's like the confessions of what it was like and what they went through and the pain and suffering. So there it is. I already spoke about this. It's your metaphor. It's your metaphor in life. Let's go. Come on. This won't play, and I feel bad about it. This is inside the cathedral, and I put it here because a lot of times I never get to the end. If you go online, you can and hit Camino de Santiago on YouTube and such. It's a 4-minute clip, and something happens in this church that it does not happen in any other church in the world. And it's the incense burner. And you will hear singing going on. This incense burner is this high, and it flies the entire length of this church. You cannot believe you're going like, holy moly. And people line up to get into Mass to be able to see this phenomenon. There are places in the church where you can see the pilgrims' fingerprints in the marble because of so many pilgrims being there. So I can't show it to you, but I'm clicking. There we go. That's what it's called. And if you think again, if you put in 4,000 pilgrims in the 1100s in that church, it didn't smell very good. So that's another good reason why you wanted to have incense going. That's the knot that they tie on it. And yeah, it did break a couple of times. A couple of people have been killed. It went out a window one time. So, and everybody's special. There's the weight. It's 1.5 meters high. And it's amazing to watch it. Can you see? 24, yeah, 60 feet up in the air. Amazing, the arc on it. And if you have extra 500 euro, you can pay them off and they'll swing it for you. Anyway, I haven't gone that far yet, but it is an incredible experience to be there. Also, what happens during Mass is everybody that has gotten to Santiago that day and is registered, the priest will announce every country of pilgrims that arrived on that given day. Yep, there we go. Some of you have better road maps, right? See the arrow? Yeah, that's how you find your way on the pilgrimage. So I feel bad for the people in the year, 1200. They had to go, but we have arrows. These arrows, there's tens of thousands of them on the Camino. And the communities put them on. This is on a trash bag. Can you believe that? Anyway, to tell you which way to go. And so nobody ever gets lost. We just get misplaced. And here's a picture of me. And see the arrow? I know it's hard for maybe where you're at. It's right between the sign and my head. There's a yellow arrow there. And because I'm misplaced and I'm walking to Montserrat. And it's because the bushes were covering the arrow. And so, the other picture with the car, we were looking for the arrow. We couldn't find it because the car parked in front of it. So, and when you're walking 20 miles a day, getting misplaced for a half a mile is not happy. So the way, let's see if I can go back. I wanted to put this in here because of people in the Bible that were pilgrims as I think about them. And the first one I have, I love this picture. It's a painting. And I like the isolation because as a pilgrim, that's what I feel like. And like if you go home tonight, there's nobody there, just, maybe you and the dog for whatever the reason. Sometimes it's lonely. And I can tell you, walking 7,000, 8,000 miles, you're alone a lot. Matter of fact, you dwell on death a lot, believe it or not, because your brain, you relive every single thing in your life. Every single thing. So I like this one because it's that, and time is different when you're walking at 2.5 miles an hour. You notice things that you never would have seen in a car. So time changes entirely. And think about it. In my 2.5 month walk that I just did, I never made a phone call except to my wife and family. I never read a newspaper. I didn't watch the news. I left everything behind. And it was my goal not to do any of that. And it's fascinating what happens to the concept of time in your thinking about life in general when you eliminate all those things out. It gives me shivers because it's, anyway. So who am I got here? Well, I picked Abraham as my first pilgrim, and because he fits the definition, and he's also by definition my definition, and I'm not a Bible scholar. He's the first Hebrew, and Hebrew, the word, as my understanding, means to travel across a border, and so that's the first Hebrew is Abraham. He gets the marching orders. And he goes from place to place to place. And actually, that was his distance I've gotten out of the Bible. He walked about 100 miles to do all the things that he had done. I love this picture. It's done by a Jewish artist. He just looks like I want Abraham to look in that picture. You know, the colors, the worn cuffs, his fingers. And he's just staring out there like, he's just staring out there. That's that idea of time. I picked another couple for you. Come on. Click. There we go. I walk alone. I had to do another one like that. And because here's the other one I thought that walked alone. And that's Moses. And whether you believe it's 40 years or 40 days, for me as a pilgrim, what that timeline represents, it represents that of change. Is we began here and we end here, but dramatic change has to happen in between because I need to go through the stages of walking a pilgrimage. It's my understanding the people that arrived in the Promised Land were not the same people that started off. And Moses never got there. And I have the distance there, and I forgot. It's like 800 miles for his walk. You know, I could have done that in a month and a half. Actually, because I have done the 800 miles in a month and a half. Moses is, I think, a great example of one. Here's another one. I love this picture. It sort of makes me feel about watching the 12 o'clock news today, is that I need those people back in my life again, walking into the city, the three wise men, right? And there they are. And as I did research on them, it's interesting. Every country that has a story of the three wise men have names for them and looks for them and what gifts they brought and what the gifts represented. And they came from these three countries. Pretty amazing. And I guess nobody got in a fight, right, on the way there. It's sort of like they had a mission and a pilgrimage. Star of wonder, star of might, star with royal beauty, bright. And so they weren't looking to pick a fight with anybody, even though they were from three different countries. And I've walked with people from all different countries, and no one's ever picked a fight with me. So we're getting there. This is my last one, and then I'll show you Santiago a little bit. Again, somehow finding paintings. So here we have a shepherd's house. It's sort of old and not very fancy. And on the table is a worn Bible. On the floor is a walking cane and the old man's hat. He's obviously dead. The shroud is over it. And look at that dog. I mean, this man was my life. He was everything to me. He took me out. He did this. He pet me. He hugged me. He did everything, and the man is dead. And I use this one for Jesus. And if you can't read this line, it says, "But now I'm going to him who sent me. None of you asked me, 'Where are you going?' I came from the Father and entered the world. Now I'm leaving the world and going back to the Father." And so I thought if I was an apostle and Jesus just died, I'd be a little scared, and I'd be like that dog and wishing he had come back. And anyway, that's my painting. I thought it's just a nice one. You should know this was done in the 1800s. It's in the museum in England. As a result of this, when it was done, so many people loved it. It was reproduced and put in many, many homes. And as a result of that, that's where the Animal Protection Agency came about, was because of this painting. So you never know. Oh, I put Martin Luther there. All right. So I found out we had actually, he and I have a lot in common. And but in 1510, he's having some issues, and his superior says, go on a pilgrimage. And he does, and he goes to Rome. And then he has all these other thoughts, as you all know, you're experts on that. I recently walked, I'll show you that. There's the path that Martin Luther walked, and I walked the same path this year, almost. I walked from Switzerland all the way to the Vatican, 800 miles. And so when he talks about going across the Alps in the winter, I went across the Alps in 90-degree temperature, but I did the walk. When I got to Rome, I can tell you one quick story. Was I went into the Vatican, and I'm standing there, and I said to the guard, "Where's the Sistine Chapel?" He says, "You're standing in it." It's interesting to walk 43 days, 20 miles a day in all kind of weather and get to Rome, and Rome wasn't important. Does that make sense? I wasn't excited about getting there. Once you got there, it was the task of getting there. It's like going to heaven. I got there, now what? And so and I think Martin Luther had some issues. He looked around the Vatican and said, whoa, I don't agree with everything. And so it does happen. So why do people go? Life-changing adventures, deeply into yourself. You want to eat a lot of food, because you can. Unplug, be part of history, let it go. Watch the movie. A lot of people watch the movie, and I'll get phone calls saying, I want to walk. And many people don't even know why they're walking. And that's true. So a lot of different reasons why people walk. There we go. But there are 6 stages to this walk. And there's 6 stages in your walk, and everybody else I had shown you already. Is that we go through 6 stages. And this is a picture on the Camino. When we go down this hill, we're going to get into what's called the Meseta, which is 25 miles of nothing but flat, 90-degree temperature if you're there in the summertime. It's tough. The first stage of any pilgrimage is a calling. Because you told me you had a calling, right? Yeah. You explained it to me at dinner. All of a sudden, I'm in business and publishing. I represent a big company. And one day, I say a prayer, and I know I have to become a minister. And so it's because sometimes we get a sameness in our lives, and we go like, what's it worth? What am I doing? How do I do things different? So it's a calling. That's a road by my house. And so in this case, it's Spain. This is what Spain looks like. If you didn't know, Spain has the highest elevation, average elevation next to Switzerland. And so there are a number of mountains, there's snow, you can ski, you can do all kinds of things. That big brown spot you see in the middle, that's the 25, 30 miles called the Meseta that you have to walk. So Spain has a lot of different types of personalities. The other thing Spain has, that it's had so many different kings and queens because it was broken up into so many pieces. And so if you're looking at the purple, that's up where the Basque people live. And the Basque don't speak the same language as the people in Galicia, which is in the green up there. And Galicia has the same weather as you have right here. And so different regions had different players, different people. What they all had, though, is they had Christians, Jews, and Muslims all the time, back and forth in that country. And that was one of the hardest things that I still am trying to learn, given what's going on in the world today, is all of this was going on 2,000 years ago. And nothing's changed. And it's hard for me to say that, but it does enter into a lot of this. The arrows you see there are 13 of the paths that are the major Camino walks. And so you can go to Portugal, you can go various parts of Spain, you can go to France. I did one from Le Puy, France, through. It's like 1,000 kilometers. But I'm going to focus on one particular one. It's this one. It's the Camino de Santiago. It's called the Camino Frances. And because it begins in France, it's the most widely used path in the history of pilgrimages. And why is it that way? Is because, again, historically, like today, I want to go to Jerusalem and walk. My wife won't let me go to Jerusalem now. Because you couldn't go to Jerusalem a period of time. It was unsafe because we had the Crusades. We had a lot of things going on. So think the 250,000 people are walking to Santiago. They can't go to Jerusalem, and they're having issues in Rome. You know, so they go to Santiago. There's 33 spots there. As you're walking, it's 500 miles, 33 spots, 33 years in Christ's life. So it makes that analogy that way. Come on, there we go. So when do you start getting ready to do a Camino? Like now. I have people that are I'll see next week, and I hope they've been walking a lot. You obviously have to prepare, you have to walk. If you put this backpack on, this is what I practice with. Actually, there's a 14-pound blanket in there, one of those heavy ones. This weighs 22 pounds. And so you can't just show up on the first day and start walking with 22 pounds in your backpack. Or you can, but you'll cry a lot. That's my wife. She puts rocks in hers. And where do you start? Well, usually at the store buying lots of expensive stuff. Backpacking equipment, for those of you that did it when you were young, it's a heck of a lot more expensive than it ever was before. It's amazing, the cost. The lighter the stuff, the more expensive it is. And so literally I help people figure out the cost of their trip. And that's stuff. So what you see on the floor of my hallway in my house, that's it. That'll all equal about 20 pounds. And that's all I take. And you do that several times over to keep narrowing down what you're taking. Step number 2. So you have this calling, then you have a separation. See, you had a separation because the company let you go, right? Sorry, I'm not picking on you. But if you ever lost a job, that's called separation. So you're going to your job for the last 15 years and the company folds, now what? And it's that separation. It's an awful feeling, that separation. You know, I met my wife 46 years ago backpacking. When I left without her, that was separation. It was so hard. And those of you who've lost a husband or wife, you know. So you have to leave. And you have to, that's part of it. If there's a sameness, then you have to leave. This is, what do you do to leave if you're a pilgrim? If you were in the 1200s and you were a pilgrim, think about it. You're in this little, hut, mud place, village, whatever you were in, and all of a sudden you have the sameness and you have to separate, and you got 4 kids and the farm and the wife. How do you tell them you're going to leave for several months? Because you're walking 500 miles, right? There's no take a bus, and it's dangerous. And so the first thing you do is you make your will. And you come to grips with your family. You make amends to everybody you can. And then you go to your church. So that's my house on the lake somewhere there. And these are my pastor and the other priest there. They claim they're never going to bless me again because I've done 11 Caminos or 11 pilgrimages. But if I was in the 1200s, I would go to my church. and I would get my blessings, and I would get other types of things from them. And we didn't do our prayer. We should do it at the end. Let's see what we got. Come on. Make it work. There it goes. And this church is in Barcelona. In the bottom of the bowels of this church, when they were doing some renovations, they found documents that were dated to 1065. And these documents, actually I gave, we have the prayer here somewhere. It's all the prayers that the priest would say to bless you, to send you on your way to do your pilgrimage. This is a big deal. Yeah, and so this is, that's not. So this is one of the prayers. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, shoulder these satchels and script which bear the necessities for your pilgrimage. May the fatigue of bearing them expiate your sins, so that forgiven you may reach the shrine of St. James full of courage. And when your pilgrimage ends, that you may return home filled with joy. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Every church I go to, when I walk the pilgrimage, at the end of Mass, the priest will call us up one by one and give us a blessing. It's incredible to have a priest, again, put a hand and say a prayer at the end of that. So we have a purse and a satchel to carry. And if you're a pilgrim, you can never bind your purse. You have to leave it open, because that's a sign of poverty and alms, that people are going to give it to you. You're not keeping something away from you. So everything's a symbolism. And I have a staff. I have my walking poles now, but a staff. Receive the staff in support for your journey and your pilgrim striving, so that you may defeat the enemies fighting against you and arrive safely at the feet of the Holy Apostle. Next week I'm going to do a shell ceremony, and I'm going to say those prayers to a group of people. And each person then I will put a shell over their head with another prayer. And this shell, she walked in, the first thing I saw is what?
My shell.
Her shell around her. And because in Christianity, the shell is baptism, is fertility, but this one represents all roads lead to Santiago. Because I have St. James's cross on it and I have it around my neck, it means that I'm a Christian. And if you're not a Christian, you can get a shell and you can have it with nothing on it. It's not to say it won't change by the end. They don't give you this at church. These are ice creams my wife and I are eating. That was supposed to be a joke. Anyway, you don't get that. But there we go. Come on. My wife complains after 15 miles. But there's the idea of the cross. Baptismal fonts in many churches are shaped like a shell. Many of the artwork that I look at when I see Mary, and it's the angel telling Mary she's going to give birth to Christ, you'll see somewhere in there a shell usually, again, signifying birth and baptism. There you go. Let's see what I got here. If you complete the pilgrimage, all right, and if you visit the Cathedral of Santiago, where St. James is supposed to, this is different for the Lutherans now. All right, here we go. Come on, next. There we go. And you recite a decree of faith, such as the Apostles' Creed, and we're going to keep going here. I don't know. And you pray for the Pope, and you go to confession. And then you hit the next button, and it doesn't want to go. How come? Where? There we go. And then if you meditate on mercy and communion within 15 days after you visit the cathedral, the bottom line is you're forgiven all your sins. What a deal. I know. And I've done this 11 times. I'm going to heaven, man. This is it. 11 times I've done all of those things there. And I guess, come on. There's another one. Merits, yeah. I had to put this one in. Come on, where is... Back up. Sorry. Can you tell I'm hyperactive left-handed? Yeah. Anybody want to recognize? That's because of Martin Luther. This Pope is Pope Pius V. In 1568, had to make some changes. The Catholics were not allowed to buy indulgences anymore. So anyway, I had to put him in there because I had to look up some issues. But he was responsible, and everything that he did during his reign was all because of the Reformation and changes that had to be made within the Catholic Church. So Pope Pius V. But then you have to leave. So we haven't even left yet. Yeah, and that's a hard part. Can you imagine those guys in the 1200s? You know, goodbye family, I'll see you, you know, because it's like a 3.5 month walk to Santiago. And when you get there, you think you're just going to, hey, how you doing? And walk back home. You know, it could be winter. Anyway, so you have to leave. If you were going to walk, tell me where to stand. Point the thing, there we go. So for most people, when we tell them to go to Santiago, this is the process it takes. You fly, in my case, you fly from Detroit to Amsterdam because I don't want to get stuck in Newark. Anyway, well, that's worse. Those of you who travel, flying from here to Atlanta or Newark, you know, you get stuck in rain. There we go. I went, and then from there, we usually fly to Madrid. From Madrid, then, what we're doing there, my wife, is we're changing all our clothes and we're putting our backpacking stuff on. And because we usually do a holiday after our walk, we're mailing right from the airport our stuff to Santiago, regular clothes. And so when we leave the airport, all we have is our backpacks. And then we end up, you have to take a train from Madrid to Barcelona, to Pamplona. And this is the Pamplona station. So it's a 3-day process of even just getting there as part of your departure. And so you got to get stuck somewhere. Pamplona is not bad. And it's because of the food. Yeah, pinchos or tapas, whatever you want to call them, the little vino. And they know how to party there. And anyway, the girl's waving at me. I won't tell you who she is. But anyway, you get so tired of eating jamon that you don't want to see another piece the rest of your life. Anyway, so that's it. Then in the morning, you walk. Somebody should be doing this, not me. So now we stay in the hostel somewhere in Pamplona. You walk to the bus station. So plane, bus, train, but you know, you're going to get there eventually. So it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Everybody around you is going to walk the Camino. And then you're taking this bus to France. And all you're doing is seeing pictures of this going uphill. And you're going, oh my gosh, I have to walk back down it again. Then you start wondering, like, where am I going to stay once I get there? And there are options. There are lots of places to stay. Albergues, municipal, albergue, parochial means a church run. A monastery I can stay at, associations. There are lots of different places you can stay at. My wife and I, we average, for two of us for a whole day, our average is $100 a day. And and so you can live quite cheaply. If she's not with me, I'm real cheap. If I stay in a monastery, it's donativo, so it's a donation that you would give. Typically, I love to stay in monasteries because they bring out the food, they do mass, and people from all over the world sit at tables, chit-chat, drink wine and beer, and talk with the priest and all of that. I am a hospitero, so 3 times now I have gone to Spain and I run an albergue for the Spanish government. So I've done it in Zamora, Salamanca, and I just did it in Ribadillo. What that means is that I get all the way to Spain and I show up at a hostel, and then I give 15 days of my life to run it. So if all of you were walking today and you knocked on my door, I would open it up, you would give me your passports, I would find you a bed to sleep in, I would give you sheets and pillowcases, maybe a blanket if I have them. And if you need medical attention, I would try to help you out with that. And you would sleep. I would, in the morning, a lot of times I make coffee, have oranges and bananas out for you and breads. But and it's all free. It's donativo. And it's a wonderful experience to give back to people that way. So that's it. This is Saint-Jean. It's the quintessential French town where you're beginning. Lots of history behind it, churches and other places that are in this town. Remember I said arrows and shells. This is what you see all over Spain. Thousands of these. They're in the cement, they're in the streets, they're on all over. You name it, you'll see it. And there's a theory behind it that the direction the shell is pointing is the way you should be walking. Not true all the time. So that get mislaid that way. Can you only walk? No. You can ride a mule. You can do a mule. You can take a boat. There's one from England I would like to try to do. You can also be pushed. So it's very common to see handicapped individuals being pushed by volunteers across Spain. And you can bicycle it. And then you have the journey. You actually got to start doing something. All of you are still in your journey, right? You're still trying to get somewhere. And that's my wife. She's not happy. I can tell you that right now. This is only like 20 minutes into the walk. This is leaving, and we're on day number 1 is the hardest day's walk of the whole trip. It's tough. There you go. Yeah, it's 25.1 kilometers uphill and over the mountains. And if the weather's really bad, they won't let you go because you have to go over the mountains. But that's what it looks like when you're walking. And it's really hard, but it's gorgeous, just stunning. And where do you end up? You end up there. And that's where I slept. For $25, I got a bed, a full dinner with a bottle of wine. And I don't drink, so I gave the wine to somebody else, and a full breakfast for €25. And the place you stay at, the church there dates back several hundreds of years. And some of the most incredible literature in the history of mankind were written because of this place. And Chanson de Roland, which I have here, the Song of Roland. And Orlando Furioso is the Italian version of it. And it all deals with Charlemagne and the armies and the crossing of the Pyrenees. And it all happens here. That's dinner. Can you imagine? For €25, we're getting all this stuff there. I got the wrong. We're almost there. That's what a bed looks like. Not bad. There's electricity, there's a locker, big bathrooms. There's a place downstairs, there's a chapel. It's huge. I mean, you can do 400 people there. And it's run, the hospitados there are they're all Dutch, always. And it's just a great place to stay. My cousin, well, that's another story. But anyway, this is what the walk looks like. Day number 2, it's 27 kilometers. 3, 21 kilometers. 19 kilometers. And that's what the road looks like. And so you can see why you start singing to yourself. And then you end up back in Pamplona again, and you can party again. And the stories that go on. This is Punta de la Reina, which means the Bridge of the Queen. And there's a whole wonderful books that are written about the Queen and the bridge and the little sparrow and the tears and great stories that go on. And then there's these long roads that you have, the journey, and that's what you're going through right now. Is we're all doing the journey, and sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's lonely, and sometimes it's breathtaking, and sometimes you just want to get over the day. And if somebody says buen camino to you, you want to say, go to hell. Excuse my language, but buen camino means good road. And everybody says it. In the beginning of the walk, every place you go, old people will bow to you, or they'll say Buen Camino, or they'll say Ultria, which is a whole song about onward and upward. Maintain your strength. And of course, you just keep going. One story I thought I'd throw in. How are we doing? We're good. You got 10 more minutes? You gonna make it? I had to throw this one in because it's a little known story. And one of my trips, I had to go here. This is Zaragoza. It's on the Ebro River. And it's, you don't find it very much. I have Hemingway's book down there. What is the Hemingway book? What did he write? What is it? Yeah. Spain. The lead character in the Hemingway movie, her name was Pilar. And this is, that church is the spot, if you're of faith and belief, is the only time that Mary, when she was still alive, appears to someone. And that someone is James. And James is on the Ebro River, and he's with his disciples, and he's despondent because he has not been able to convert people. And so while he was there, Mary appears to him, and that's what the painting, Mary gives him a piece of the pillar that Jesus was beaten on. And so this church is one of the largest churches in the world. The plaza in front of it is the largest plaza in the world. The relic, which I know is different for different denominations, is the piece that was given to James. And there's so much ritual that goes along with it. Interesting, during the war, Spanish war, bombs were dropped on the cathedral, went through the roof, and the holes are still there, and the bombs are on the wall. They didn't explode. Yeah, so anyway, so that's the first, and she told James, upon the spot, build my church. And that's where the first church devoted to Mary was built, in that town, on that spot, if you're a believer. Makes for great stories. But the other part of the story is, why was the woman in Hemingway's book named Pilar? Because she was the strongest woman in there. And the leading name of Spanish women, whether it's first name or middle name, is Pilar, which stands for pillar or strength. So let's hear it for the women again. So there we go. All right, we're getting there. I know. Am I supposed to move again? And believe it or not, you don't have to carry your backpacks. There is a way you can at your hotel or where you're staying. You can ship it from one place to another. My wife is no longer a purist. She said, at 72, I want my own bathroom. Anyway, so that takes care of that. I'll skip a couple pictures. These are, again, continuation of the walk, what you can see, Roman roads, artwork that are in all the different communities. This is big business, because also, I mean, it's no different than if you went to Germany and walked there. Someone's making a few bucks. When you got 600,000 people walking St. James, there's money to be made, and it happened all the time. So, this is really cool. I've spent 3 Easters there, and in a Catholic country, Easter time is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. This is Burgos, but 2 years ago I was a hospedero in Zamora. It probably has the most incredible events you'd ever want to see. I'm walking down the street trying to get to my albergue, and I'm confronted with over 2,000 women dressed in beaded black gowns, holding vigil lights, with bands playing somber music. This went on for like 4 hours, and then it went on for 3 days afterwards. I was utterly amazed about Also, the downside for this is that, I don't know if you remember, Franco was in power till 1976. And if you wanted to get married, you had to get married in the Catholic Church first. It was against the law to get married in a civil ceremony. Anyway, roads, weather, that's my wife. You look weather, wildlife, there's no, cats, dogs, sheep, horses, pigs, big slugs, pretty dogs, cats all over the place. And then you just keep walking. And it's, you see incredible. What there is, at the foot of this cross is, I have to, since you're one of my friends, I have to give you that. So I have a quick story. Where's it? There's you have that cross you're showing. I fold these. I fold them on sheets of paper. It takes me about 100 folds to make these crosses out of a piece of paper. And I leave them all over the place. But a lot of times I sneak them to people. And so I'm walking on the Camino, and I have a Hemingway book, like on day one, and a woman goes by, she's in her mid-30s. She says, I always wanted to read that book. I says, I'll give it to you when I'm done. I'll probably see you again. And so like a week later, I give her the book. And another week goes by, and I see her again, but at this point, I think they're on their third bottle of wine with two other women from Germany and somewhere else. And she's complaining about everything. That's what the Camino does, right? It's like confessional for 40 some days. All day, every day, I'll tell you my story. And so I hate my husband, my business, and my kid in special ed, And I said, man, this woman needs a cross. So I literally went back to my room and I got a cross and I gave it to her, 2 weeks go by, or something like that. I'm walking early in the morning with a headlamp on, and it's misting out, and there's my cross that I gave her lying on the side of the road. And I think, wow, what happened, And so I pick it up and I put it in my backpack. I make it all the way to Santiago, this huge square with thousands of people that are walking in. Who's the first person I see? Her. What's the first thing she does? She runs up to me and puts her arms around me and cries because she has to go home. See, that's a part of the pilgrimage. You had a reason of sameness. You had to prepare and leave. You had to travel. But eventually you have to go home. And I don't know what happened, but I do know I reached in my backpack and I said, and by the way, I have your cross. And I gave it back to her. And I often think about her and what has life done for her. So those are the kinds of things. These are just places that won't make any sense. See that woman right there in the left? See the middle picture? That's 4 years later. She has 4 of my crosses. Every time I go, she speaks no English, but every time I go there, I give her another one. Anyway, she looks good in that second picture. She lost a lot of weight. Anyway, this is a Benedictine monastery. We go to Vespers and Mass there. And it's the little chapel church there was built by the Knights Templar. And a great place. What fun. This is incredible. You want to see people cry? This is Cruz de Ferro, the Iron Cross. See that hill? Every stone there was brought by a pilgrim. I have several of my rocks there. And the idea is that when you leave your home, you take some of your home by a stone and you use that as your talisman, or what do you say, your special rock. And it's the rock you use to get rid of the things that are internally bothering you. And on that hill are tens of thousands and thousands of rocks with messages on them. And every rock has a meaning. I've seen so many people, and this is the hard, I'm like 50 pounds overweight. I never thought I could do this in my life, and I made it this far. And I get down on my knees and I thank God that I made it. Anyway, what an incredible place. That's all those stones. And there's obviously more to the history. I'm going to skip because we're ahead. Churches, more churches. Leon is wonderful. I wanted to Click, couple more. I'm going to go to almost the end here. Thank you. No one's sleeping yet. How come we could end real fast by not?
Let's see,
It's not
spinning.
moving.
It's spinning like it's trying to work,
Oh, it's trying to.
isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Pardon? Okay. What I can do, because I'm running out of, I shouldn't be going anymore, but you've been a great audience at this point in time. So what ends up happening is that eventually after 33 days, and literally meeting people from all over the world, and it is like a confession. It's because you go on a pilgrimage for external reasons, but you complete for internal reasons. Is you just don't come back the same way. This is the cathedral, and those are the doors that you go in through. There's several sets of doors. When you make it to the end, to the cathedral, you get your Compostela, and this has been issued for hundreds of years. And again, I hope you would come look at it. One is my certificate saying I completed it. The other one is my certificate saying, here's how far I walked. When I recently walked to Rome, also the same thing is I received a certificate at the Vatican saying that I completed the walk. If there was a benefit of walking 43 days, 800 miles to the Vatican, is you get a free pass, you don't have to stand in line. Anyway, that's what this is. We're all waiting to get our Compostela. That's what it looks like. And this is one of my passports. Every stamp on here, you can look at it when I stop in a minute, is a place or a village or a town or a bar, because that's where you eat. And everybody tries to find the ultimate stamp that people do. And that's what I present when I go to Santiago to prove that I did the walk. And people would rather lose their personal passport and not that one. So there's another piece, and this is the end of it then, is many times when people get to Santiago, they decide that they can't go home yet. And what you can do is you can walk to Finisterre or Muxia. And in the time of the Romans, it was the last vestige of where they could be in the Roman Empire. And it was called Finisterre, for end of the earth. And it's probably one of the most magical spots you can go to. And this is walking there. This is what it looks like. And that's a bronze shoe that's there. And that's the end of the earth. And people will walk there and spend the evening watching the sunset. People walk there, watch the sunrise. It has a very stories, very mythical in its outlook, and its beauty is just pretty natural. And the reason I had to do that is the zero. I have one more. There it is. I wanted to put that picture there as a way of ending. For those of you that have been married a long time. So the first Camino my wife and I did, about 7 days in, she fell going to dinner and broke her arm, and where she just about passed out. And we always say the Camino provides. And luckily, a cab happened to be there. 3 men picked her up and put her in the cab. We got to the hospital. We spent a lovely time at the hospital. She got the cast put on and everything. And she's a tough cookie. And we had like 10 o'clock at night now, we have dinner. And we go back to our hotel room. And now we have to make a decision. And that decision was, do I go home? And this is like 3 o'clock in the morning. Our decision was that my wife said, I will go home. You have to complete your Camino. And so what she did is she gave me her wedding ring. Sorry, get my tears. And so I took a picture at the end with our 2 wedding rings. So it was the spirit of the adventure. But for my wife to have a broken arm and to make it all the way back to Detroit was pretty special that she did that. So I had to end with that. And maybe there's a moral to the story is, again, as I started, this backpack for me represents my fears when I first began. And as I continue on my personal pilgrimage in life, this bag gets lighter, my soul gets lighter, and that's all I can ask for. And someday, like the book says, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. I think I'm getting ready for that point if it happens. Anyway, thank you for putting up with me. Yeah. A question or two I can do? Pardon?
Your feet.
Oh, my feet. Everyone asks that. Yeah. So I have the same pairs of shoes I've worn, 15 pairs of shoes. And that's the first question everybody asks. And the shoes that you pick are the ones that fit your own feet. I've never gotten a blister. There are techniques when people come to my house, I will go through with them how to pick a shoe, how to pick the right backpack, things like that. Typically, the biggest thing is getting a boot that's wide enough. People have wider feet. When you're walking all day, your feet swell. And so most people buy shoes that are too narrow. And so you need to buy a wide shoe and generally a half size bigger than what you ever wore. We wear 2 pairs of socks. One sock is called a liner. It's made out of silk and it's white and it goes on and then my hiking sock goes on top of that so that when I have rubbing action going on, I have nothing rubbing my skin. Does that make sense? I can take my sock off and in 20 minutes my feet will be perfectly dry again as I'm eating my lunch. So shoes are a big deal. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
You talked about people from all over the world. Obviously, there's as many people as there are languages.
Yeah.
How do you all communicate?
Yeah, not very well sometimes. First of all, I have limited Spanish. You would think I'd be articulate at this point, but nobody at home speaks it, so I lose whatever I gain from it. But people are very patient there, and they will slow down, and they go out of their way to help you. The other languages, it typically is German, a lot of Germans, a lot of French, and the other group would be, believe it or not, South Korea. A lot of people from South Korea. And generally, I always feel like I'm the ugly American. Europeans all speak more than one language. And so I always feel bad because I barely speak English. So language-wise, I've never had an issue. The only time I had an issue with that would be walking across France to get to Spain. And thank goodness my wife could speak French because that's it.
Can you use a cell phone
Please.
to translate?
Pardon?
Can you use your cell phone to translate?
Yeah, the cell phone, the cell phones all work there. You can get a clip to put into your phone. If you don't want that, I do AT&T, whatever. I FaceTime my children and my wife so I don't make phone calls. If I have to make a phone call, then I'll do the $10 charge because I don't make many. The other thing that they have is, those of you that have ever hiked in your life, the new apps that they have for hiking, honest to gosh, if you're 1 foot off the trail, it tells you. I mean, you pay like $100 for a year to have it, but it's so accurate in telling you where you are. Yeah, and I have been lost. Yes.
One is how much money do you take with you, or what do you take in the form of money? And the second one is, what was Marjorie's last name? How do you spell that?
What was what?
Marjorie's last name.
Yeah, I got it here. I have her book here somewhere. Well, here it is. Pass this. This is Marjorie Kemp's book. And there's websites about her. As far as money goes, the euro is used over there. And I don't, I just use credit cards and debit cards. So the ATMs are everywhere. So typically I will walk into Spain with 200 euro, and that'll last me for quite a while. When I withdraw from a window, typically I always take 200 to 300 euro out at a time.
How does that compare with American dollars?
Not a whole lot different. It's like about the same, so it's not a whole lot different. Yeah, so it's not like going to Canada or something like that. So yeah, and everybody takes credit cards, Apple Pay. It's like a non-issue. So, and this is never out of my sight. My passport, my money, everything, my whole life is in this one thing. And it's with me if I'm taking a shower or anything else. So I will tell you my last cute story. Honestly, God, I promise. So you have to imagine this, because I also have COVID, long-term COVID. So I've just finished a long walk over this one day. Oops. That's okay. I don't fall apart. I'm falling apart. So we just finished this long walk over this part of the Alps. I physically cannot move anymore. And I'm in front of, I said I need a taxi. And I'm not, making this up. And the taxi took me the last 5 miles because my body could not do anymore. And so I have my backpack and that black thing, right? So the cab driver drops me off. And I'm so thankful that I'm there, but he couldn't take me to a hotel because of alleys and stuff. And so I put my backpack on and I start walking, and I realize everything that I own is still inside that car, that cab. And so the guy that can't walk is now running his little fanny off as fast as he can. And thank goodness there were other cars in the way, because I finally tracked him down, and he opened it up and I got my bag. I can't even imagine how I would ever, so the Camino provides, I guess. So that's last story. Let's go eat something.
Wait a minute, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dave mentioned the folding of paper, the crosses he makes. Dave recently gave me this. It's a King James Version Bible that he folded, and I keep this in my office. But he showed me out in his car 2 others that he's folding right now. How long does it take you to do something like that?
I'm doing the head of Jesus right now. And anyway, so yeah, it's fun. Keeps me out of trouble. I'm going to be a big hit in the home. That's it. Let's get out and stand up. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Take a look at the certificates. Thank you all for putting up with me that long. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, I'm glad you got